We'll recap the Knoxville Nationals coming up in turn number 2. In turn 3, Stan Cisar of Eagle Raceway will join us to recap last night's action at America's Home Track. And then in turn number 4, we will preview today's race at Michigan, and we'll try to preview next Saturday's race at Bristol Motor Speedway. I want to say a couple of quick notes. Congratulations to former co-host Andrew Kaczynski on picking up the win at Adams County Speedway, and congratulations to future young gun Gunnar Pike. He's going to be featured here in a couple of weeks for picking up his first win in 2017. I believe he picked it up last night at Eagle Raceway.
And then we also have the other end of the spectrum where we want to pass along condolences to another racing family that took a hit here recently. Joe Gascoigne's father, I believe it was, Larry, passed away recently. And obviously, if you see Joe here anytime soon, give him a little love.
In turn number 1, we're going to recap the results at Watkins Glen, and we're going to do that pretty quickly because we got a lot of audio to get to in turn number 2. We're going to talk to the top 5 finishers, get audio from them, plus a recap from Kris Krug, who's one of the announcers there at Knoxville, also one of the announcers at I-80 Speedway. So without further ado, let's talk about Watkins Glen. Martin Truex Jr. was there the whole day. He was just stalking in the background, finished second in Stage 1, second in Stage 2. Kyle Busch got stage win number 1, and Daniel Suarez picked up stage win number 2. Good for him. He qualified up front, and he ran up front for most of the day. Don't know where he finished stage 1. It was outside of the top 10, but he was able to get the stage 2 win.
Well, he pitted, which with the strategy, then he didn't have to pit and was up front for the start of stage 2, and that's what got him that win.
Do they need to mix up these stage lengths for Watkins Glen and Sonoma? Because most of the stage breaks have come about, I don't know, maybe a quarter of a tank past where these guys can stretch it for a full tank. Does that make sense? A full fuel run plus probably another 10 or 15, 20 laps. So it adds for a little bit of strategy, but some of these guys are able to go the entire stage at the road course.
Well, I mean, the road course, if you run the race beginning to end, I think you can actually do it with 2 stops.
Yeah, you're right.
So
it doesn't take much.
They'd almost have to put more laps in the race, and some of these races, I think, used to have a few more laps, but the cautions would kill them because a caution lap, at a road course is like a day and a half long. So
Watkins Glen is 2.45 miles
without the boot
to go a long ways. That's a long ways to stretch the fuel is what we're getting at.
Yeah, but I mean, fuel mileage is going to be what fuel mileage is. It is a little bit lower because you're going through the RPM. You're going up and down. So the hard acceleration does take your fuel mileage down just a little bit. But, you can say it ended up being a fuel mileage race because it pretty much did, like Martin Truex said after the race, the hardest thing I've ever had to done was let somebody go by me for the lead.
So again, stage 1 win went to Kyle Busch. He picked up yet another playoff point and another stage win. Daniel Suarez gets his first stage win and first playoff points, but he's going to have to get himself in on a win. And that window for qualifying via points is getting ever so small.
It's ever so small, and when you look at somebody like Suarez, who's probably Rookie of the Year, it's not quite wrapped up completely, but it's pretty darn close as long as he stays healthy and makes all the shows. Still a very good year for a rookie, even though he may not make the playoffs, and because you got several guys that are, they need to get the win. Joey Logano needs to get a win to get in, and, it's going to be tough for a couple of them.
Absolutely, and this is since the playoff system was created. Back in, was it 2005 when they started it? Wasn't it? Whatever year they started in, I thought it was. Busch won in 2004, and then they started it the next year. Maybe it was Kenseth in 2004, and then they started the next year. But either way, this is the least amount of people that are going to qualify via the points, and we still have 4 races to go.
Right, and, like you said, if Joey Logano sneaks in and wins, that even makes it worse, so.
I think right now there's 3 playoff positions left for people to qualify via points.
Correct.
And there's, like you talked about, there's a couple of highly talented drivers out there that haven't got wins yet that they're due. I mean, they've got talented rides. They're talented drivers, and we wouldn't be surprised in the next 4 races for them to rattle off a win. Finishes at Watkins Glen. Dale Earnhardt Jr., tail end Charlie. Started 28th, had engine issues just 22 laps into the race. I remember thinking back to Tony Stewart's last year and watching his results and thinking, boy, his season just can't end. His retirement can't come quick enough for him. It's just a painful one to do this, farewell ride one last time around for Tony. And Dale is starting to have the same thing.
Well, I mean, Tony ended up last at Watkins Glen and was running top 10 and then broke a rear end, which that's the last time I remember a rear end breaking, and it had been a while since one had broke at Watkins Glen. So
I don't know what when Gordon announced his retirement, he had kind of an up and down year. He qualified for the playoffs, as did Tony Stewart because of the win at Sonoma last year when he retired. But Dale's just had kind of a struggling couple of years, and you don't blame him for announcing his retirement and walking away. And he's just not having much fun racing right now. I mean, let's face it, this is a sport, so 90% of the fun comes from a good finish,
right?
And quality finishes. But Dale Earnhardt Jr., tail end Charlie in 37th, Jimmy Johnson in 29th. He was the last car on the lead lap. Austin Dillon 26th, Ryan Newman 25th, Joey Logano 24th. Dirk, it seems like every week we just keep saying Joey Logano's playoff hopes get a little bit dimmer and a little bit dimmer.
Well, and then you got to go to the irony of it all is he's got to win, and he's still not in the playoffs because he got caught with something,
Kyle Larson finished 23rd, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 20th, Casey Kane 16th, Brad Keselowski 15th. Kind of a mixed bag of where the playoff contenders and some of the more talented drivers that you're typically seeing up front finish throughout the field at Watkins Glen. Top 10 finishes: Eric Jones in 10th, A.J. Allmendinger 9th, Ryan Blaney 8th, Kyle Busch 7th, Kurt Busch 6th, and Clinton Boyer with a top 5 finish. Denny Hamlin 4th, Daniel Suarez 3rd, Matt Kenseth comes home runner-up, and Martin Truex Jr. able to save that last drop of fuel. Actually, there's a little bit more because he made the cool-down lap and the burnout. So good for Martin Truex Jr. getting his win on the year, taking home 58 points. He was just 2 points shy of a third sweep for the season. I don't believe anybody else has a sweep.
No, I do not believe so. Kyle Larson was close at both California and Michigan. I mean, California, he ended up with a stage win and a second and then won the race. So
we're going to take a break. We're going to come back in turn number 2. We've got a full recap from the Knoxville Nationals, the 410 Nationals here at Knoxville Raceway. So we're going to take a break. We'll come back and listen to those interviews and give our thoughts and recap on the race from last night here at Knoxville Raceway. We'll be back here on the front stretch.
This week's young gun on the front stretch is 26-year-old Dustin Thompson. Now, he may be old enough to get big discounts on his auto insurance, but he still qualifies as a young gun since he's in the middle of his sophomore season behind the wheel of a dirt car. After racing 5 nights last year in a Sport Mod, Dustin has found plenty of success this year in a Sport Compact. So far, he's racked up 4 feature wins, putting him on top of the points at Adams County Speedway, and he sits 3rd in the NASCAR Division 5 standings. Someday, Dustin hopes to compete in the Malvern Bank Super Late Model Series, and he really wants to make the feature for the Silver Dollar Nationals. Next time you're at Adams County Speedway or at a dirt track special, take a closer look at the front of the Sport Compact feature. More than likely you'll see the number 24 Herzberg Seed Southwest Iowa Dirt Works Thompson Trucking Sport Compact driven by Dustin Thompson. This week's Young Gun has been presented by Craig Kelly from Insera Kelly Sewell Personal Injury Attorneys.
For almost 70 years, Insera Kelly Sewell have been Nebraska's premier personal injury firm. Race drivers, fans, and their families have been calling Sunset Speedway's Craig Kelly for over 30 years. The IKS firm focuses first on your healing and appropriate medical care, then they focus on getting you great results. Craig Kelly and his experienced team at IKS stand ready to handle your injury claims in both Nebraska and Iowa. If you or a loved one have been injured, Google Craig Kelly or call him at 402-391-4000.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs has taken a page out of IMCA's rulebook and gone crate. These brand new low-emission engines will still have you white-knuckling it all through the Metro's fastest indoor facility. Joe's Karting is now friendly for all skill levels with their brand new Honda-powered engines. It's time to get to Joe's today and find out what drivers like Jack Dover, Shaylee Bate, and Andrew Kosiski have known for years. Located in Council Bluffs and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K.
Dan and Dirk are rolling into turn 2 with a little attitude on the front stretch.
Welcome back to it, heading into turn number 2, and it's time to recap last night's 410 Knoxville Nationals, presented by 5 Hour Energy. Real quick, Dirk, thoughts on the crowd turnout, the crowd excitement, the energy, the everything that we experienced in the couple hours we were here?
Well, the probably the neatest moment of the whole night was right there at the end of the race when Kyle Larson, who had been, driving like a madman trying to get to the front, running around there chasing shots, and he got real close to him and was going to try a slide job but could not get in front of him. And the crowd collectively was like cheering, and then oh.
It was just like last year when Jason Johnson did the slide job for the lead, and the cars were going along the backstretch and we're standing in the front stretch, and you can hear the crowd over the roar of the other cars because it was a full green run at that time. The cars were spread all over the field. It was loud, but you could hear the crowd over the roar of the other engines, and that was pretty insane to watch. It just like last night. I mean, it's really, really funny to hear how excited that track gets at anybody passing Donny Schatz. And they sell the T-shirts here. Anybody but Schatz. They love to hate him here. He is the Kyle Busch of the dirt racing. He's the Scott Bloomquist of the sprint cars. He's just a polarizing guy. That he's won too much, so they love to hate him.
Yeah, but when he gets behind the wheel, he is all business, as all the great ones are.
Yep.
And obviously a 10th Knoxville win. And what's it been, like 14 years since he's been worse than second? Or something like that.
Yeah, that's what Kris Krug was talking about, and he'll mention it during his interview for the post-race recap. He's been racing the Knoxville Nationals for 14 years, and he's never finished worse than second. He just won his 10th Knoxville Nationals in 12 years. I mean, that's just insane. When you think about the greats that have won the Knoxville Nationals, they haven't done it like Donny Schatz has done it. It's pretty insane to think about that stuff.
Yeah, and, there were no controversies last night. The only thing close to a controversy was the McCarl deal. And he got up into the wall and he tore a banner down. So this banner is hanging out onto the track. They had nothing they could do but throw a caution and get this banner out of the way.
Right.
And then everybody got bent out of shape when they sent him to the back. And I think the reason was the fact that they said he stopped on the track. Well, it's a sprint car. If you stop, somebody's got to push you to get going. He never stopped on the track.
Yeah.
But he did cause the caution.
It was sprint car version of stopped. He was slowed off the pace, so they threw the caution to avoid any issues. All right, fifth place finisher, Brad Sweet in the number 49 car. We caught up with him in a post race and asked about finishing in the biggest race in the country.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little disappointing. We had a little higher hopes, but to front of the top 5 at the Knoxville Nationals is nothing to be too ashamed of. Napa Auto Parts guys work really hard, and we've been the top 5 car all year. Just the things that we worked on for our car to be really good in the race. The track didn't really play out for that tonight. It moved around, and actually the faster lane was the top. So, we still kind of made the bottom work there late in the race. We were able to get back by Brian Brown for 5th there. But, if you don't win, really, it's you only get one shot a year at this race, and you're close. You want to get the wins, and, we're a little disappointed in that. But, we'll take our 5th, and then we'll move on for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and with as many cars as come to this thing every year, to get your shot at a feature for the Knoxville Nationals is tough, but a 5th place finish can't be too sad with that.
Yeah, we're not too sad. Like I said before, you get one shot and you want to win it. But obviously Donny's going to be extremely hard, and honestly, the guys that finished 2nd, 3rd, and 4th were all probably just a touch better than us, on the faster lane of the racetrack. So we got a little work to do, and I got to get a little better as a driver, and hopefully we can win one of these.
You think maybe another caution would have played into your hand at all?
No, I need a lap traffic. I needed that top lane to get dirty air and get, bottled up behind each other. And, and that would have helped me, because I was running the bottom and not a lot of people were down there. So as soon as we started to get lap traffic, I got by Brown and was right on Shane's left rear coming to the flag there, and that's what we needed. We just needed to disrupt that top line, and we would have been in much better shape. So I'm going to vote for a 40-lap race next year with no pit stop, and I think it'll actually be a better race for the fans.
Shocker. A driver votes for something that will make it a little easier for him to win the race.
Well, that and another thing that cracked me up when we were talking to him was when he talked about dirty air. He used a big boy NASCAR term for a sprint car race.
There's no such thing as dirty air in sprint cars. I don't know what anybody's ever talking about. We were unable to catch up with fourth-place finisher Shane Stewart, so we sat down with third-place finisher Kerry Madsen in the media center.
Yeah, I went for it. I thought it was definitely on. I just didn't quite pull it off, but I would like to have not lost second over it, so I could have went and challenged, but unfortunately I just couldn't get second back, and that was the race. But the pass was on. I just didn't quite get it done. So we had a great race car, which is a shame, but still good to get a podium.
Yeah, these only come around once in a while. I mean, the Knoxville Nationals obviously only happens once a year. Your opportunity to get a challenge for it only happens even less than that, so it's kind of a tough one to let slip by.
Absolutely, but I don't think I left anything on the table. I mean, I went for the win when the opportunities were on. It just didn't quite work out, but it was a great race car.
During the press conference and a lot of times out on the podium, I kind of saw you almost kind of with like a far-off stare. You were going back through the mind of the race. You were going over the race again in your head.
Obviously, I'm disappointed because I think I had a better car, but it was just wasn't meant to be. It wasn't our night, so I just hats off to my guys to give me such a great race car and get a great finish.
Again, that was Kerry Madsen who ended up finishing in the third-place spot. And Dirk, was he the dirtiest guy that was there last night?
Oh, he looked like he'd been in mud drags or something. He was just filthy.
It was I mean, you understand that Donny Schatz, the leader of little over half the race, he's probably going to be a little bit cleaner, but he dealt with plenty of laps. I could not believe how dirty Kerry Madsen was. It was actually rather entertaining to see.
Yeah, and he might have got some of that. Maybe he hadn't washed the fire suit for luck or something for a couple of days. You don't know what these guys go through, but you mentioned his stare. And when he was sitting there at the podium that whole time until, it was like he had to come back from wherever he was when they asked him a question. He was looking right through people.
Absolutely.
It was a very focused stare.
We got to sit down with Kyle Larson, who was kind of one of the stories of the night, of the weekend. He qualified in on points. He was going to have a good starting spot after Wednesday and Thursday nights, qualifying nights, and social media, fans, owners, track promoters, sponsors, him, everybody petitioned Chip Ganassi to let him race. And he talked about that a little bit in this interview, but Kyle took a couple of shots at Donny Schatz there late, but just wasn't able to make it work, so we asked him to talk about that race with Donny Schatz.
Yeah, I felt like we were pretty even with him. He just did a really good job through traffic, and I felt like I maintained through traffic as well. I got close to him there late in the race, but made a costly mistake there. Caught the cushion wrong on exit, and then got into the wall on the front stretch and hurt my run, but yeah, he's just really good and doesn't make mistakes.
Had a real good move on that first restart that you guys had. Made a big move on that. Do you think maybe if you could have got one or two more yellows, that might have helped?
I was hoping. I didn't get the best of restarts there that last one. And when I was restarted second, I needed to be closer to his back bumper and maybe pull the slider like Kerry had tried, when I got to second. But yeah, I just spun my tires a little bit and got in line. But yeah, I had some more shots there in traffic.
You talked about the whole conversation the entire week was, is Kyle going to be able to race, and then the whole social media push to try to get Chip Ganassi to do it. It's kind of interesting to watch it unfold because as Chip's position, you're his star quarterback. Do you play him in the last game before going into the playoffs and risk any kind of freak thing of happening?
Yeah, he has. He definitely took a big risk tonight. We're close to the playoffs in NASCAR. We're locked in. We're definitely championship contenders. So, he had every reason to tell me I couldn't race here, which I'm not really allowed to be racing tonight. And he granted me permission to come here and run, and I got to thank him a lot for that because I was able to get here and have a good time, run second, stay safe, and now get to Michigan and go for a win tomorrow.
Well, you mentioned something up on the podium that neither one of us had given a thought to. Is you're getting your exposure. You guys got a sponsor to find, so it's probably a smart move letting you out here.
Yeah, I think our team kind of realized that, and that was a big factor in me coming to run here. There's so much exposure behind the Knoxville Nationals, and especially with the week we had leading up to it. So hopefully it'll help them guys in search for a new sponsor, but we got to wait and see.
Bittersweet moment for you. A really good run for the Knoxville Nationals, but again, just a little bit too short.
A little bit too short, but still had a good time and learned from it for sure.
It's worth noting, I think, that Kyle absolutely nailed it on the head. It's funny to hear him say it because he's such a modest person, but he's absolutely right that him coming to the Knoxville Nationals brought another level of exposure. It was a new level of exposure that I don't think the Knoxville Nationals has had in a long time. In Knoxville Nationals dirt racing, it is the biggest thing in its own little bubble, but it popped into the NASCAR bubble just a little bit this week with Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, since he won the first night's qualifying, you know, and was into the feature, but was saying, you know, yeah, I can't come race on Saturday, you know, the world exploded.
Yeah.
You know, like, that's just not fair. He can't come race. Chip, you got to let him. And,
right.
You know, and Chip did let him.
Yeah.
So that part was good. And like I said, you know, the marketing aspect. But the one thing you and I talked about last night is how dirt racing, you know, everybody's dirt racing so huge, you know, just make a dirt race, you know, a Lucas Oil race on TV every Sunday and stuff like that. But last night, Larson was the only one racing, but Ricky Stenhouse was here in a car owner role. Casey Kane was here in a car owner role. Ryan Newman was here at the track.
As a fan.
Ryan Blaney was here at the fact. And, you know, and we saw them in the media center and, you know, had a couple choice words with them, you know, just having a little fun. And, but everybody went bonkers.
Yeah.
You know, these big NASCAR stars, but NASCAR sucks, were treated like royalty here.
Right.
Everybody was chasing them down, getting autographs, trying to get pictures. You know, it was such a weird feeling. You know, they got chased down more yesterday than they do at a cup race.
Yeah. You know, you've got the guys like that Ryan Blaney and Kyle Larson. They're on the leading edge of what NASCAR is going to be in a couple of years. And so Ryan and Kyle are really dealing with the apex of their popularity. And I don't know, maybe it's not the apex. Maybe we're just getting started on how popular these two guys are going to be. But guys like Ryan Newman, he's kind of in the twilight of his career. It was a big deal last night to have Ryan Newman walking around. I mean, I looked through my Facebook feed, and there was people taking selfies with him and getting autographs of their shirts. And absolutely, you know, NASCAR, it's love it or hate it, criticize it because people love to attack it, but it is a huge level of exposure in what Kyle is doing for dirt racing, bridging that gap between the two sports. And let's not be naive here. Dirt racing can help NASCAR a lot.
Absolutely.
There's some aspects of dirt racing that NASCAR can adapt to and make it more commercially friendly and more consumer friendly for the modern consumers. And I think there's a couple of things that NASCAR can help dirt racing do. Kyle is bridging that gap, and it's a beautiful thing to watch right now. Going over, we're trying to get going here so we can get over to turn number 3 and talk to Stan Cisar. Race winner Donny Schatz. It's no secret I love to hate Donny Schatz. And I don't love to hate him because he's a winning guy. He's been a jerk to me quite a few times in my media career in just the last couple of years, trying to get interviews, trying to get audio from him. But he won me over a little bit last night. I don't like to admit it, but he won me over a little bit last night.
Yeah, you actually enjoyed talking to him last night, for a change.
He gave us a great 5 minutes, and really I cut some audio out because I asked a stupid couple of questions, and so I didn't want to play it, but you know, he gave us a great couple of minutes, gave us some great information, some great audio. He was friendly, he was smiling. It's pretty easy to smile when you just won $150,000 for the 10th time, but you know, I digress. But so here's the audio from race winner Donny Schatz. At the beginning of the race, David Gravel was the hands-on favorite. Walking into that race, he'd racked up the most points. He'd won his qualifying nights. He'd won his features. He was absolutely on fire. And he started to walk the dog away from Donny Schatz. He was putting down 3/10, 4/10 faster laps. And Donny kind of held back those first 21 laps. But once Gravel lost his engine and retired from the race, I don't think Donny was going to let anybody get back by him.
Well, and we actually had got a chance to talk with David Gravel before the race. We weren't too pressing as far as trying to do an interview at that point because we honestly thought, just like everybody else did, that we'd at least see him on that podium at the end of the night.
Yeah.
And the way he ran those first 20 laps, he was going to be in the center of that podium. There was nobody going to touch him unless he broke himself or, really made a big mistake or something, which is exactly what happened. And there was nobody more disappointed than him, but, the second in line in fast cars last night was Schatz. So, he ended up with the win.
And here's Schatz talking about not letting a lead go after he took it over from David Gravel.
No, I wasn't. We had a good battle with him the first couple laps, and then kind of settled in and waited for the racetrack to change a little bit, get some laps in, and we got to traffic. We got another shot there, so we tried to stay as close as we could before the stoppage. It's kind of nice to be leading before we actually did stop, but we were able to have clean racetrack there for a little bit. Car felt really good. Just had to maneuver traffic the best we could. Didn't do it all right, but there was times when I could get by cars and get a little room, and then there was times when I needed to do things a little bit different. But we were able to get the win, and that's the important part. We're enjoying it right now.
At the beginning of that race, watching the lap times between you and Gravel, he had an incredibly fast car. Is there any point when you start to worry about it, or does the veteran in you say, it's a long race, I got this?
It's always a long race, and no matter what happens, the last one's the one that counts. I mean, I was reliving last year's race. We were awesome the first 25 laps, just incredible. And we didn't win the race. So it doesn't really matter, like in that situation, what you led the first 25 or how good your car was. It comes down to winning the race, and that's the last corner or last lap. So you got to lead. So sometimes you have to be patient with that. Sometimes it's hard. David was setting a real good pace, real torrid, really going after it and attacking it, and I was going to let him do that, as long as if I wasn't falling backwards and could stay inside of him. That's all I was concerned about at the time.
Do you let him do that knowing he's probably going to burn his car off or burn his tires off or hurt something?
Oh, you don't expect something to break, but it's really hard to run this race 50 laps that hard. I mean, I learned that last year. I run too hard the first half, and it caught us out. So, you got them situations. He hadn't been in that situation before, so I'm sure he learned a valuable lesson. But that's just part of just how you race. Everybody races a little different. I got my way. It works for me some days, and there's days it doesn't work. Last year it didn't work for me. Today it did.
You said earlier that you were staying away from the bottom. Was the track just wore out down there, or was your setup just no bottom running down there?
A bit of both. The top was too fast to be trying to make the bottom work. If I had to, I could, but I just couldn't get stuck right. And would the track not have been that fast on the top, I'd have probably had to do something to the race car to make it a little bit better on the bottom and make it work. But it was just so fast on the cushion that you had to be there. You had to keep that speed up. You had to keep momentum. You had to keep buried in the cushion. And you just make the fastest laps you could with momentum. So, different scenario. If we'd had to come through the field from the middle, we probably have done something different. But we started near the front, and that helped us.
10's always a special number. It's kind of an anniversary number. Is this a special number for you, or is it kind of generic where every Knoxville Nationals is special?
Every one of them's special, but, man, I'm telling you how hard it is to win these races. People don't realize it's hard to put into perspective. It is 10, yeah, but, man, that's just as tough to win number 10 as it was number 1 or number 7 or whatever they are. And when you win races, we win races every now and then. We win on a regular basis, and when you do that, it's expected of you. And if you don't win it every couple nights, then it's like the hammer drops, and then you get criticized, or them guys are done, or they're having trouble. And so when you're in that position, there's a lot of pressure on you. There's a lot of the knife's at your throat all the time, and our expectations are to keep that motivation and keep that winning streak going. So. We work extra hard to do that. The guys do. I try to stay in as physical shape as I can and do my best with it. But those guys work awful hard. And I'm sure even though we're done racing tonight, they know what we do different to be a little bit better next time.
During the pre-race ceremonies, when you're up on the front stretch and they're introducing you, I mean, you got to acknowledge it that it's the loudest roar out there. Half boos, half cheers, maybe a little more boos. Is that fuel for your fire, or does that ever get to you?
No, it's not fuel for the fire. It's part of the sport. You got to take the good with the bad. There's obviously a lot of cheers. I have a lot of fans, and there's a lot of people that don't want to see you win. It's just that's why they're here. They all came to the event, and the grandstands were packed. One thing about it, there was good reactions, there was bad reactions, but I think 100% of them had a reaction, and that means you're doing something right.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly Dale Earnhardt's thought. If they boo, if they yell, as long as they're doing something.
Yeah, they yeah, that's a Tony Stewart motto too. So I don't pay much attention to it. I've grown quite used to it. It's not something that makes you unhappy or happy. It's just part of the sport. There's things in this sport that you learn to you cope with, and some of them you may not like, and some of them you may like, but it's just part of the game, and it's part of the full circle of racing.
If history teaches anything, it's that they're all going to love you once you retire.
Yeah, and you can kind of sense that with the Steve Kinzer thing. I mean, Steve was in that boat once, probably a lot more so than I am, but by a long shot. And I was standing next to him tonight when they introduced him to the crowd, and it was pretty incredible. I got goosebumps. So I guess there comes that time when, turning to the tables, times change. I'll enjoy it at that time, but right now I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing.
So, again, that was Donny Schatz winning his 10th Knoxville Nationals. We ran into Kris Krug later that night and talked to him about his thoughts and the recaps. Kris does the announcing weekly there at Knoxville Raceway and helps out a lot with the Nationals, the 10-day period that is the Knoxville Nationals for Kris. And we talked to him about what a race it turned out to be. It looked like David Gravel was going to just walk away with this, but after he lost his engine, things turned.
It looked that way the first 25 laps, but I mean, look at this thing. It's two features, really. 25 laps, and you get a 3-minute break in between. So, at first it looked like he did, and maybe he did in the next 25 laps of the car last, because, I mean, I looked at Race Monitor at the end of the race, and I remember seeing David Gravel before he blew the engine up. 16.029 was his fastest lap, and you look at Donny Schatz, and you see a 16.5 something. And so, I mean, unreal that it's a half-second difference in a lead. That's almost, you would think, reverse. Put Donny Schatz with that 16.029. But it was great, a fantastic race. We talked with Donny mentioned in the press conference that on that second-to-last restart, had Madsen pulled that slide job off and got it, he might have been gone, because it was so hard to pass down low, and the air was so hard to get with. And an outstanding race tonight, and you kind of look at Donny Schatz. He had 4 second-place finishes in a row before he won his first Nationals. He won 4 straight, comes back, gets second in 2010. Then he goes off and wins 5 straight, gets second last year, wins again. The guy has not finished worse than second at this event in 15 years.
Yeah, when you're kind of talking about those lap times between the best lap for Gravel and best lap for Schatz, you kind of wonder, Gravel was putting down those fast times, but was Schatz the smarter one to kind of take care of his equipment for that full 50 laps?
Well, he said in the past, let him lead the laps at first. He knows what he's doing here, obviously. He's one of the best ever, if not the best ever. So, just kind of, I think you almost think he's just kind of hanging out at first. He was in second, never fell back past second all night long. But, I think those first couple of laps kind of filling things out, letting Gravel do his thing. It really would have been interesting to see how this thing would have wound down, how Gravel stayed up there and did not blow that engine. And just, you got to feel for the guy. The CJB Motorsports number 5 it's on a roll tonight.
Well, you mentioned the dirty air up on that high line, and we talked to Brad Sweet, and he said he was the only one that he said that his people told him that was able to make it go forward on the bottom. So he was hoping for a lot of lap traffic to get that dirty air and slow that top line down.
Yeah, absolutely. That 49 car was on a roll tonight as well, and to make that line work that he was running was fantastic. And Sweet has experience here. He's won here before. He won here my first year ever on the call here in 2012. I won the Outlaw show that year, actually. It was a one and only show for Outlaws here at Knoxville. So Brad has been able to work this track pretty well himself, and again, just not quite enough for that KC 49.
Speaking of the larger series coming down and playing in the dirt for a little bit, you really couldn't go 10 seconds without seeing a Kyle Larson shirt, hearing a Kyle Larson story, seeing a Kyle Larson Facebook. I mean, he kind of took over the Knoxville Nationals this year.
Oh, absolutely. And outstanding. And not even the Nationals itself, but Southern Iowa Speed Week. He damn near came from 14th to 1st. Actually did come from 14th to 1st for a split second and fell back to 3rd over Oskaloosa. And he was possibly the fastest car there as well, but ended up 3rd on the night. And happened that Chad Kemenall started a row behind him and finished 4th, so he got hard charger instead of Kyle. But, I think the big story, obviously, Donny getting 10 national victories now in 12 years is a huge story. That's tremendous. It hasn't finished worse than second in 14 years, and, it's beaten Kinzer's record. I think as a racing fan, you have to be thrilled and excited for the exposure that not dirt racing, not NASCAR, but the sport of racing got in all forms to come together tonight. You had NASCAR fans who may have never watched a sprint car race tune in tonight and watch this. If they didn't tune in tonight, they're going to hear about tomorrow and think, my God, what can this guy not drive? He has a huge fan base up there with the NASCAR following and everything, and that rank is going to win out. Schatz, these guys, they want to see him race more and the Outlaws, and they wish he could be a full-time driver, but they understand that it's kind of hard to do. But I just think that the real winner of everything here is the fan base of racing in general, and exposure that Chip Ganassi gave or allowed to happen here for Kyle Larson. And he was tuned in tonight on thecushion.com, and it's going to be great.
You're getting mocked behind you, by the way.
I am. There's this person behind me who is mocking me.
Say nice things. She's holding a gun.
And she's trying to get you to
It's just a taser.
By the way, he said it's just a taser if you want to tase him, bro.
Don't tase me, bro. Don't tase me, bro.
By the way, the one heckling him is his girlfriend in a badge.
She's a fan now. I'm going to say it. She claims she's not, but 2 T-shirts and a McKenna Hassey Racing hat later. Come on.
It's hard not to be a fan when you come out to this, and I think that's what Kyle was really going for, kind of bringing it back around to the NASCAR and Chip Ganassi thing. He really wanted to get as many NASCAR guys down here to kind of get exposure, and I think it goes both ways. I was a NASCAR fan to start with, and then I got drug out to a dirt track race, and I got hooked. Dirt track fans can go up and watch a NASCAR race and get hooked. For some reason, there's a divide between the two, but guys like Kyle Larson and Ricky Stenhouse and Tony Stewart, they're starting to bridge that gap.
Oh, absolutely. And when you look at Kyle Larson, he's a younger Tony Stewart. No offense to smoking the age thing, but it's true. The guy can drive anything he wants. Outside of racing a Formula One car, which should be interesting one day, we'll see how he does on a road course. But I think if you're a NASCAR fan, if you're a dirt car fan, there's no reason to be worried about the fan base and the following, because you can look at someone like Kyle Larson and you can say, okay, he's going to have a following tonight.
Real quick before we wrap up turn number 2 and head over to turn number 3 and talk to Stan Cisar, I want to give a recap on a couple of the other local drivers. Jack Dover, who I believe he started 15th, ended up finishing in the 15th spot after getting as high as 10th at one point in time. And then Don Droud Jr., who was the other Nebraska native that we were able to kind of keep an eye on, finished 21st after I believe he started 15th or 16th.
Droud started 15th and Jack started 14th.
Okay.
In that C main.
So those are, yeah, you're right, both in the C main. Did not qualify for the B, and were not able to move up. But a good night for both of them, and I think the good news for Jack Dover, he didn't break anything.
In the 410.
Right. Last week in the 360, he broke plenty. This week in the 410, he did not. We're going to take a break. We'll come back in turn number 3. We're going to talk with Stan Cisar and get a full race recap from last night's races at Eagle Raceway. We'll be back here on the front stretch.
Are you looking to book your next outing? Look no further than Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs. Located just north of Bass Pro Shop, Joe's Karting can handle outings of well over 100-plus people. Bachelor parties, corporate outings, team building, birthday parties, and much more. Give Buddy a call today and reserve your outing. Joe's will even work with local restaurants to cater your event. Book yours today at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K. It's time to get to Joe's and find out what everyone already knows.
The IMCA Race Saver Sprint Nationals return to America's home track, Eagle Raceway, September 1st to the 3rd. Come watch over 125 sprint cars from all over the United States and Canada. Friday and Saturday feature qualifying races and the Jake Ida Memorial Race of Champions. Sunday's action will include last chance qualifiers and the 50-lap feature to crown a champion. Save some cash. Pick up your 3-day passes for $35. Green flag times and more details are at eagleraceway.com.
Quaker Steak and Lube is the official watering hole for the front stretch and the best place to catch all the NASCAR action today. Open at 11 a.m. with delivery available to Council Bluffs.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Feather the brake and get back to the gas. Dan and Dirk are headed into turn 3 on the front stretch.
And just about ready to head into turn number 3. Time to talk with the voice of Eagle Raceway and a guy who was probably keeping a pretty close eye on the race monitor for the action that was going on at Knoxville Raceway. Stan Cisar joining us on the show. Mr. Cisar, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, Dan. How about you guys?
We are fully charged from last night's action, and it's time to talk the recap at America's Home Track. We've already recapped the Knoxville Nationals, so let's talk about what happened down at America's Home Track, Eagle Raceway.
Well, we had a pretty early night, and you were right on the race monitor. I think there was about half a dozen of us all gathered around the race monitor, and then somebody came up and they had the audio replay for the last couple laps. So we were already done, had done interviews and everything like that by the time that A feature was in and back east. And gosh, what an awesome drive for Kyle Larson. And you know, like you guys had said, it's a great thing for dirt track racing in general. And props Chris Chip Ganassi for letting Kyle do the deal. But another good night of racing at Eagle Raceway, America's Home Track. Of course, everybody, the point standings battles are kind of winded down a little bit. Only after last night, only 2 more nights of points left for the season track championships. Kicking things off, Hoosier Racing Tire, IMCA Sport Modifieds. It was a war most of the night long. Sean Harker had some problems in the heat race. They made repairs, got him back up and going, and he still managed to qualify for that feature. But a good race all the way through, and I got to give a call to this guy. I believe his second ever Sport Modified A feature win, one of the young guns. Gunner Pike, the top gun, picked up the win, and it wasn't without a fight from Sean Harker. I mean, they were side by side for probably the last 6-8 laps of that race, and Harker was down underneath him 2 or 3 times, and Gunner was able to maneuver back by him before the line every time. It was a great race, side by side, the last 5 or 6 laps, and it was Gunner Pike hanging on for the win.
Wow,
Sean Harker,
Harker though, 17th to 2nd. That's a heck of a run.
Great run. Like I said, he had some issues in the heat race. There was a little incident. He was involved in that, so he had to come in out of the B main event, and but came back and picked up a second place spot. Joe Scheidler in the K00 car, he had his best run of the season with a 3rd place finish. Trent Roth hanging on to that points lead in car number 14T with a 4th place finish, and Ari Scouten in the 99 RE, another one of the young guns. Had a great night last night. Another top 5 finish for him, and all in all, that class usually never disappoints down there, and last night was no exception. In the Valentino's Pizza IMCA Hobby Stock Division, a familiar face in Victory Lane, but another one that was not without a fight. You know, we talked in the winner's interview. Roy Armstrong picked up the win out of Beatrice, Nebraska, and this is the 3rd particular night in 2017 that somebody, one of the younger drivers or newer drivers that have yet to win a feature, looked like they had one in the bag. They had that lead. Roy run them down and followed them and followed them and followed them, and before the final checkered flag flew, happened to make that pass. And last night, another one of them deals, Lance Todd, car number 7L, led that race for probably the first 3 quarters of the race, and then your points leader Jeff Ware and Roy caught up with him. Roy ended up taking the win. Jeff Ware with a 2nd place finish extends the point lead, but Lance Todd in a car and I believe Lance builds his own cars, which is something that you don't see. He's a 2nd generation driver. His dad raced for years down at I-80 Speedway, and a great run for Lance in that 7L. Jeff Watts comes home in the 4th position, and another guy with a good drive. This guy started at the back of the B main tonight, transferred into the A, and came from 16th on the grid to a 5th place finish. That's Tyler Albrecht out of Eagle, Nebraska. So good run again for the hobby stock division, and you know, one of the most competitive classes. But there's great racing, but it seems like the cream always rises to the top. Talk about your war. The war was in that Mighty Modified division, brought to you by Kaplan University. Once again, 2 or 3 incidents at the start of the race. These guys are all on the edge, and they're racing probably 110% for all of the 20 laps. And there was a couple incidents that caused some attrition, unfortunately, for Anthony Roth, who was only 5 points behind Shane Hyatt. He got caught up in one of those first wrecks and wasn't able to make the repairs in time to get back out. So Hyatt, who survived a 2nd wreck, will extend the points lead just a little bit in this modified division. But this was a great race, and the story in this race was Bob Zobek. Zobek was involved in an incident in the heat race. The car actually was up on the guardrail and on its side, and he was knocked from contention. Well, he came from, I believe, 20th on the starting grid and raced his way all the way up into the 2nd spot.
Yep.
So a great drive by Zobek, and Zobek was getting close to Anderson at the end. Another guy, Chad Anderson's brother, Dustin Anderson, the A-Train, was running toward the front, I believe running second at the time, and Chad was still in about fifth at that time, and he looked like he might have a shot to win that deal. Unfortunately, his engine expired. Nate Thompson with a good run, car number 3T, Rick Gropp, and the fifth place finish on the grid was Trevor Baker, Baker's best run of the season in the modified division. They never disappoint, and last night, once again, no exception. In the Mountain Dew Kickstart IMCA Sport Compact division, this is for the front-wheel drive four-cylinder machines. Had a first-time winner, and it's been kind of long overdue. This guy raced with a cast on his arm for about the first half of the season, but it was Tim Horsham out of Raymond, Nebraska, picking up the win. Cole Creco, probably one of the fastest guys week in, week out, comes home in the second spot. Sarah Cronin, with her best finish, comes home third. And this is another guy we got to give a call out, a guy that's been around this racing deal. He graduated from high school and got his first race car. I don't think he's finished a race this year. Last night he wins his first heat race and comes home with a fourth-place finish. That's Jared Jackson in car number 98. Great run for Jared. He had a lot of fans really happy in the grandstand because feeling good about him because he's had such a tough season. And newcomer John Martinez in the 00J comes home with a fifth-place finish in that Sport Compact division. Next up, Race Saver IMCA Sprint Cars. Excuse me, go ahead.
Cole Creekhouse leading in that point series, right?
Yes, and pretty dominant car for most of the season. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, Cole made his debut in a hobby stock last night. He chose to start at the rear of both of his races, but kept the car underneath him, stayed with the pack, and I think if they could get that, I don't think it's a real high-dollar car yet, something that he just picked up and got behind the wheel and going to do a little testing at the end of this season, but I think the move is made, and I think you're going to be seeing Cole in that hobby stock division in 2018, and he'll be a great addition to that class.
Good.
In the sprint car deal, we had a great racetrack last night, and we were kind of joking around that something was just missing last night. Something didn't seem quite right. Things weren't just the same, and we were kind of messing with the fans just a little bit. The hole in turn one was non-existent last night. No hole in turn one. Sprint cars put on some great racing all through the heat races and into the A main event. Unfortunately, we did have one Josh Most driving Rick Germer's car. He got up on the wing, we're speculating that he had a part brake going into turn one because it didn't seem like the car turned. It went straight into the fence, and he got up on the wing and did the end over. So the showstopper did stop the show, but for the wrong reason last night. That was in the heat race action. In our A main event, really good race. He had a good track on the top, good track on the bottom. By the end of the race, the top, just like Knoxville, the top seemed like got a little bit better than the bottom did. And the guy that picked up his first win earlier in the season got win number 2 last night. And we were talking in the Victory Lane interview, Matt Richards usually always gets his game turned around just before the Nationals. I think he's the only Nebraskan that's qualified for all 4 of our Super National A main events. And he picked up the win last night. The old gun, Toby Chapman, comes home in the second spot. Their points leader, Adam Gullion, with another consistent third-place finish. Doug Lovegrove, ever since he's brought out that black number 1 machine, he has been on the front stretch almost every week in that top 4. He had a fourth-place finish. And Ryan King, who coincidentally driving one of Kyle Larson's older chassis, still got the Finley Farms lettering on the side of it. He came home with a fifth-place finish in that A main event. Gullion extends the points lead. Tyler Drucke, who was second, finished back in the 6th spot. Shaylee Bade, Mike Boston, and Gene Ackland rounding out the top 10 finishers. And you ran the commercial. That's probably one of the greatest bargains in motorsports right now. That 3-day season pass for the Race Saver Sprint Car Nationals for $35. Man, that's one that we hope we can pack the place out because everybody that's came to this event has walked away saying we're going to be back next year. And wow, what great racing. And cars from right now, I believe we have 25 states represented. The pre-entries are right under the 100 mark, and we're still 3 weeks to go. So I'm quite confident we're gonna at least meet and probably surpass last year's 117 cars. It's 15 heat races each night, just sprint cars, and they talk about big wings, big excitement. Man, the racing was great last night, and really looking forward to that deal coming up on Labor Day weekend.
Get your tickets in advance, the 3-day passes for just $35 at EagleRaceway.com. Stan, you'll have the call with Tom Grasso, and it sounds like I'll be in the pits for the first couple of nights, so we're going to have a good time for those 3 days.
Sounds great, man. We'll see you there.
Thanks. I always do appreciate you calling in and letting us know what happened at America's home track, Eagle Raceway. Thanks, Dan. Have a good Sunday.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks, Dirk.
We'll come back at turn number 4. We will wrap the show up here on the front stretch.
For almost 70 years, Cisar, Kelly Sewell have been Nebraska's premier personal injury firm. Race drivers, fans, and their families have been calling Sunset Speedway's Craig Kelly for over 30 years. The IKS firm focuses first on your healing and appropriate medical care, then they focus on getting you great results. Craig Kelly and his experienced team at IKS stand ready to handle your injury claims in both Nebraska and Iowa. If you or a loved one have been injured, Google Craig Kelly or call him at 402-391-4000.
Joe's Karting in Council Bluffs has taken a page out of IMCA's rulebook and gone crate. These brand new low-emission engines will still have you white-knuckling it all through the Metro's fastest indoor facility. Joe's Karting is now friendly for all skill levels with their brand new Honda-powered engines. It's time to get to Joe's today and find out what drivers like Jack Dover, Shaylee Bate, and Andrew Kosiski have known for years. Located in Council Bluffs and online at joeskarting.com. That's karting with a K.
The IMCA Race Saver Sprint Nationals return to America's home track, Eagle Raceway, September 1st to the 3rd. Come watch over 125 sprint cars from all over the United States and Canada. Friday and Saturday feature qualifying races and the Jake Ida Memorial Race of Champions. Sunday's action will include last chance qualifiers and the 50-lap feature to crown a champion. Save some cash. Pick up your 3-day passes for $35. Green flag times and more details are at EagleRaceway.com.
Dan and Dirk are live for one last corner. Give them a call now at 402-573-0590.
Just a few minutes left to go in this edition of the Front Stretch. If you happen to miss any of our recap from the Knoxville Raceway or talk about Watkins Glen, any recap from Eagle Raceway earlier in the show, we will post the show on YouTube and Stitcher on Monday morning at about 10 a.m. to about 11 a.m. once we get the show ready to go. And also want to send out a congratulations as we're looking through some of the results from the area of Young Gun feature. Ryan Jenkins picked up is that his second feature win in the A-Mod? I think it's his second.
Correct, yeah. He's got one at I-80 Speedway.
You know what? It might be his third because he got his first at Adams County.
There you go.
So that might be his third feature win in the A-Mods. Rookie season and doing really well for himself. This week's Young Gun was Dustin Thompson, a sport compact driver out of Adams County Speedway. So if you have anybody you want to nominate for the Young Guns, we're going to take anybody. As Dustin will prove, he's 25, 26 years old, but he's into his second or third year of racing. And then we've had guys like Jacob Hobscheid who have been featured, who's 17 years old, but he's been racing for 12 or 13 years. So the Young Gun moniker is just kind of a moving target. We just want to put a spotlight on the young, up-and-coming drivers, and that young can be numbers of years raced, or it can be years on this earth. But you can email us, frontstretchradio@gmail.com, frontstretchradio@gmail.com. Let's talk about today's race at Michigan. Starting on the pole is going to be the two of Brad Keselowski, and his teammate Joey Logano is going to start outside.
But only one reason for that, and that's because the Toyota's sandbagged.
Right. They obviously did sandbag. And, boy, if you haven't seen Kyle Busch's comments, he pulled some punches, didn't he, with those comments about Brad Keselowski thinks that the Toyotas are going to tune down the horsepower in their engines for the next couple of weeks, because this is when NASCAR really starts to look at how these cars are performing and starts making aero adjustments going into the playoffs to kind of get some parity into the sport. And Brad's been on kind of a kick the last 5-8 days, how much stronger the Toyotas are, even though you brought up the point that Chevy and Ford have more wins independently than Toyota does.
Yeah, I mean, Chevy and Ford each have 8 wins on the 22-race season, which leaves 6 for Toyota. Mm-hmm. So everybody that's got this Toyota dominance, Toyota has led a bunch of laps, especially recently. They've led, the stat was stupid. It was almost 90%, like in the last 5 or 6 races.
and this stuff happens all the time. Listen, it's not Toyota that's dominating right now. Martin Truex Jr. is dominating right now. He happens to be driving a Toyota. He's racking up all these playoff points, all these stage wins. Take Martin Truex Jr. out of the equation, and Toyota's struggling.
You know, I mean, Kyle Busch has had, you know, a lot of stuff, but he's just got the one win, you know. Some of the reasons he hasn't won are, you know, his own doing.
Right.
You know,
Strategies
I don't
that
think
didn't
any of
play
them are NASCAR's doing.
Right. Let's see. This race last year, Kyle Larson picks up his first career NASCAR Monster Energy Cup Series win. Chase Elliott comes home second, Brad Keselowski third, Ryan Blaney fourth, and Kevin Harvick fifth. Jimmy Johnson runs in sixth, Carl Edwards seventh, Jimmy McMurray eighth, Denny Hamlin ninth, and Joey Logano 10th. Speaking of Carl Edwards.
Let's go back real quick, though, with what's going on with Michigan. Kyle Larson won the first race there this year and also won the race at California, which is basically a sister track, almost identical speedways between the two. And then Kyle did lead the last practice.
Right.
So he's going to be there.
Absolutely. He's going to be an incredibly strong figure. And going over those stats again, Kyle Larson did get the win, followed by Chase Elliott, then Joey Logano, Denny Hamlin, and Jamie McMurray. Martin Truex Jr. with a sixth-place finish, Kyle Busch 7th, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. 8th, Dale Earnhardt Jr. 9th, and Jimmy Johnson 10th. It's worth noting Jimmy Johnson is going to start from the back of the field today because he has to go to a backup car after a hard contact with the outside retaining wall during final practice.
Along with Casey Kane, so half the Hendricks cars will be in backups.
Real quick, let's talk about Bristol. Okay, today's race at Michigan is on NBCSN and MRN. Coverage starts at 1 o'clock with the green flag waving at 2. If you don't have NBCSN or you want to enjoy it with some delicious food and some cold beers, head on down to the official watering hole of the front stretch, Quaker Steak and Lube, and they're going to take great care of you. I highly recommend the Wisconsin cheese curds to get your day started. I will be enjoying those at the Homestead Party. You can guarantee it. We don't have any more time to recap the Bristol race, so we'll just have to post that stuff on our Facebook page, but that's going to be coming up this Saturday night. Next weekend, we will be live again following the Saturday night action at Bristol Motor Speedway, and once again, we're going to have Stan on the show to recap Eagle Raceway. We'll probably scare up a couple of interviews. We'll recap the race today at Michigan and recap the race at Bristol, so big show lined up for us next weekend. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Dirk, it's been a heck of a weekend at Knoxville Raceway.
It was a good night last night. I do agree with our first trip over last year and making it a 2-night trip to make it a 1-day trip, you know.
I highly recommend any fans make it a 2-3 day trip. For us as media guys, we didn't get a lot of access on Fridays or Saturdays to the drivers, so we cut back our budget a little bit, saved a little bit of money, and just made it a 1-day trip. But I'm planning on next year for the 360 Nationals, I want to make it a couple of day trip because it's a circus involved with a race. It's beautiful.
Well, I've never been here, and I've been to a lot of races, and I'd never been till last year, and it definitely lives up to its hype. As we spoke, you know, last year was probably the best 410 race that they've ever had. It was definitely a race. I wish we would have had a TV with us in the truck yesterday driving over so we could have listened to the truck race from Michigan because that had to be good to watch.
Yeah. All right, we got to wrap it up for today. Thanks to Craig for running the boards back at the studio. We'll do it again live next weekend. This has been The Front Stretch presented by Joe's Karting on AM 590, Omaha's ESPN Radio.
The official watering hole of The Front Stretch has you covered any day of the week with the best wings, great burgers, and amazing steaks. Each weekday from 4 to 6 is happy hour, featuring $1 off draft and well drinks plus $4 Luberitas. Mondays are kids' night. Tuesdays are all-you-can-eat wings for $12.95, and the lube even delivers to the Council Bluffs area. Like Quaker Steak and Lube Council Bluffs on Facebook for a full list of weekly events.
Get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Mid-America Drive, Council Bluffs.